Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I have with me a very accomplished professional coach and author from Boston, USA, Mr. Tony Martignetti. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Tony is the founder and chief inspiration officer of Inspired Purpose Coaching. He's worked with leading life science companies. He's the host of a podcast called The Virtual Campfire. And as all of you know, I'm very partial to authors. He's an author and he's written a book titled Climbing the Right Mountain, Navigating the Journey to an Inspired Life. So, Tony, author, podcast host, coach, you seem to be doing exactly what I seem to be doing in my life. But let's start talking about your book, Climbing the Right Mountain, Navigating the Journey to an Inspired Life. Before you tell me about the book, is it available on Amazon and other platforms?
It is. It's available on Amazon. That's the primary place you can find it anywhere in the world.
Okay.
So you can grab a copy there. It's on Kindle as well as paper copy, paperback.
Terrific. So tell me about the book.
Yeah, the book, first of all, the title itself has two meanings to me because I do love climbing. Mm-hmm. I'm an adventurer in my soul.
Okay.
So my next climb, in fact, is Kilimanjaro. I'm doing that in August. So I'm excited about that. But it's not just about climbing, so don't be fooled. Mm-hmm. We all climb mountains in our lives and in our careers. And the key thing is to make sure that we're thinking about the mountain we're climbing. Is it something that we've defined for ourselves? Are we on the path that really fits what our definition of success is? So the book really helps us to think about, gosh, have I really laid out a plan that fits who I am? Or am I navigating a path that was set for me based on what society thinks success looks like, or my parents, or other people who have great intentions, but they're not me? And in the book, I lay out some guideposts to help people to reset their path if they need to. Now, keep in mind, I'm not going to tell people, oh, you have to leave your job and go find another path. It might just mean looking at the current place you are from a different perspective. So,
very interesting. And do you want to talk a little bit about some of the recommendations you make for people to navigate an inspired life?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important things is to make sure that you're not thinking about the next step as the place where you'll be happy. You know, I often think about finding fulfillment is about being happy first. You have to connect to finding that connection to happiness along the journey, even though there's times that are going to be hard. You're going to have struggles. Growth is not meant to be easy.
Correct.
It's supposed to challenge you. But if the times of growth are causing you to be frustrated and thinking that, gosh, I don't even, I'll be happy at someday in the future, then you've lost sight of who you really are. So one of the exercises I love to have people try is that if you look into your week ahead and you say to yourself, like, what is it about the week ahead that has me excited? If you can't find something in the week ahead that has you excited, then maybe you're starting to be in the wrong place, in the wrong mountain, or at least you've lost sight of who you are.
Wow. So, when I look at the title of your book, An Inspired Life, and the title of your company, which is an Inspired Purpose Coaching, obviously you work a lot on inspiration.
Yes.
Tell me about some of the challenges that you have addressed when you start to coach people, and how do you inspire them?
Yeah. So I think about inspiration, and it's a very important part of my life and about what I help people through. I find a lot of people come to me because they've lost their spark of inspiration and they need to find that spark again. And it really comes from, little practices of looking at things in the world that light them up. And inspiration, in my mind, is little communications with what your soul's purpose is. And I know that's a deep, profound thing to say, but I'll say it again. Inspiration is a communication with your soul's purpose. So those are those little moments in your life that you find yourself excited, energized, motivated, and feel as though there's something working. So you want to find more of those inspiration points. If you find yourself not feeling that, then there's something missing.
And, when you talk about your soul's purpose, and and let me take you to what you said a few minutes ago about, you ask people, what are you going to be looking forward to in the next week? How would you relate my soul's purpose with what I'm looking forward to, not just in the next week, but in my life ahead?
Yeah. So the key thing is that, you're not necessarily, your purpose doesn't just it's not something you're finding. You don't look for it. It finds you, but you have to start to stay open to the things that are showing up, the things that are lighting you up. So I think one of the things that it's important is that you have to look at every single step you take as an opportunity to learn something about who you were meant to be, who you are becoming. And so you have to have your eyes wide open to what is this teaching me right now? So your soul's purpose is waiting for you to find it. In a sense, it's actually looking for you. It's already there.
Fascinating.
So I think there's this element of just making sure that you're open to experiencing that and taking little experiments along that way, where you're able to say, what can I try in my life that I haven't tried that maybe opens me up to something new?
Interesting. And for my viewers and listeners, could you give me an example of what you have worked with, without any names, of course?
Of course. Yeah. So one example of this is someone who I worked with who was a person who was a finance executive. And he basically said to himself, well, first, he was an accountant in nature, more of a technical accountant, and felt really frustrated because he was always held in that box of, I'm not being seen as someone who's strategic or, someone who could be anything beyond just that accountant. And now this is not disparaging to any accountants out there, but I think that's challenging to transcend that place where you're being treated as one thing, but you have more potential than just that. And the more we work together, we started to see that, all it takes for him to transcend that box that he's putting himself in is to not define himself in that way.
Correct.
So I got him to really see that, sure, he can own his background and appreciate all the things he's learned, and in fact see the skills and the things that he's learned as valuable, but how can he use those in a new arena? And he was able to find himself in this place where he's moved from being in that accountant place to now being in the CFO role a few years later, which is fantastic. So it helped him to really unlock his potential, but also being in this, CFO role has really made him feel like he's contributing on a new level, but also doing it in the capacity of creating something more powerful for himself and others and leading at a different level.
Quite amazing. So now let me talk to you a little bit about coaching. 4 decades ago, when I started working, coaching or mentoring was done either by a senior colleague who took a liking for you, or a senior family member. What has evolved over the last so many years that now people are looking for professional coaches and are willing to pay for them?
There's so many things that have happened, so many dynamics that have changed. Because even, thinking about how the idea of coaching being more, corrective than it was, then it's more unlocking of potential. I think there's another part of that which is important to mention. Having an external view, somebody who comes from outside of your family dynamics, or someone who's even inside of your company, gives you that ability to free yourself from that. What if this person, shares information with other people? What if I share something that I don't want that could be held against me? The ability to have a safe space creates this unbelievable freedom that allows people to open up and share things that they wouldn't normally share. And I think that's where, at least the coaching that I've felt myself open to experiencing and creating, is this ability to have that confidential space that's safe and expansive. So people can be free to not only share the events of their day, have that thought partner who's really able to say, what they're seeing through their story of what they're sharing, but also challenge them much more powerfully than they might get at their work or in their families.
Amazing. And, I've spoken to many people about coaching and mentoring. Some people take a very purist view of coaching, which is that, it's completely different from mentoring. And some people say that, there's a very fine line and it depends entirely on who you're working with. I'd love to get your perspective, Tony.
It's a great question. I'm an ICF certified coach, and I'm proud of that. And I've even sat on the board of the ICF New England chapter. And there's certain times during my me working with people that I'm not a coach. So I have to kind of switch hats from time to time and say, now I'm coaching, but now I'm not. I want to make sure that I look at the person in front of me and I intuitively sense what they need at this given moment.
Correct.
So I think when you're serving somebody, and the key word here is serving, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't always have to be coaching per se. Sometimes it requires giving them the insights that you're hearing about them, that you want to share with them, that allow them to move forward. And I think ultimately a lot of people, that's what they're looking for. They want someone to help them along their journey, whether that's coaching, advising, consulting, mentoring. The key thing is, what are you bringing that's your gift? That's important.
And the other thing that I have observed very often when I coach is sensitivity to culture. Very, very, the culture can be from the individual, who wants to be coached. Culture could be the organization that individual belongs to. What is your perspective on culture and coaching?
Well, I think you have to be very, very cognizant of culture for sure. And I think that, like you said, culture is not like a one size fits all. There's an element of knowing, that person, getting to know that person in the environment that they're living in. It's important because it will require you to be intuitive about what they need to survive and thrive in that environment.
Correct.
And I think part of the reason why I feel like I was drawn to this field of coaching is because I had this sense of, I've traveled a lot in the world. I have a real understanding of like sitting back and not dictating what people need, but instead feeling into like, how can I help that person from the point of view of who they are, not trying to change them, but instead trying to make them the best person they can be from who they are. And I think that's important, is you have to respect that person from where they're coming from and what environment they're living in. And if their environment is not serving them, you have to also call them out on that and say, hey, one of the things about your environment is it's keeping you stuck. I'll respect you for, what that environment is, but I want to tell you that this is what's keeping you stuck.
Very well said. Very well said. So another question that keeps coming up is that how does a coachee evaluate whether she or he has got a good coach?
Question. Yeah, I mean, there's two points of this. First of all, at the beginning, there's that energy match. You know, is this person somebody who, you know, matches my energy? They're not too high energy or too low energy. Are they somebody who seems to get me from the get-go? If you don't have that initial connection, then it's hard to feel like you're going to be wanting to work with this person, want to open up to that person. So that's important from the get-go. And then as you go on in the journey, if you feel as though you're holding back, you feel as though you don't have that sense that there's anything happening, then you have to do one of two things. You either have to say, hey, this isn't working, and we either have to make a movement to make something different happen here, or or end the engagement. And I think the coach will respect that. They'll either do one of two things. They'll say, yeah, you know, I feel it too. I don't feel the connection any longer. Or I appreciate you saying that. Let's do something. What can we do to make this work? What can we do to change the dynamics, to change the energy of how we're working together?
Very interesting. And my next question, Tony, is that there's a whole new young generation of leaders who have now come into the corporate world, you know, from the millennials to the Gen Zs. And my own interaction with them is that I think they are very clear-headed, and they know where they want the world to go. And I often tell youngsters that I'm positive that what my generation has messed up, you people will correct. I would love to get your perspective on how do organizations get coaching ready for the younger generation?
It's a great question. And I think it's so interesting because we often, we will judge the things we don't understand. And I think there's a lot of people out there who would say, oh my God, this new generation, you know, they're so different than us. I'm like, yeah, great. That's awesome. Yep. But we now, in order for us to be coaching ready for them, is to make sure that we understand, listen first with the intention to understand, so that we can serve them and help them to be that voice, and that not just the voice, but the catalyst for the changes in the world. We have a big role to play. And I say we collectively, because it's all the generations that came before. We set the foundation, but now we have to make sure that we help them to lead the way by basically being coaches, mentors, thought partners along the journey for them to be able to make that world happen for us. So I think that it's really important for us to listen and be very intentional about how we're laying out the path for them. And yeah.
Very interesting. And what a great response. So Tony, I've got time for a couple of more questions, and I'm going to move to a few questions for you personally, which, because my audience loves to get to know my guest a little better. But let me start with saying that, you know, you worked with leading life sciences companies. You've now become a coach. You're an author. You're going to be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in August.
Yes.
What would you say are 3 key milestones or pivot points in your life?
Well, I love this question because it's funny. My podcast is called The Virtual Campfire. And one of the things that I talk about there is flashpoints, points in your journey that have ignited your gifts in the world. And I think it's important to think about those big moments and how they shaped you. I think one of the big ones, the first one, would be the moment that I was at my darkest point. I was working really hard to become the finance leader in the world of biotech. And I was burning myself out in the process of, serving someone else's dream, really. I thought it was mine, but it wasn't. And working so hard that I was not seeing my family, not taking vacation. I had lost my moral compass, if you will. And I was burnt out and depressed. And I had some dark moments where it just wasn't sure if I wanted to go on, but I found that one moment and I said, look, I have to do it. I have to move on and find that hope. And that hope was I wanted to see my son live a full life. I wanted to see him grow up. I wanted to see him to thrive. And I can't do this. I can't be here. And so I found myself out of that. So that moment was really dark, but little by little, through many different ways, I was able to get out of that dark moment. And that was the first, I guess, pivotal moment for me.
Yeah.
The second one was starting my own business. My first business was a consulting business, and I had been laid off from a company, and it was like having the rug, pulled under you. You feel like you're doing great.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what the heck happened, And then, you feel like, what do I do now? Well, I decided to start my own consulting business, and the business was helping small to mid-sized biotech companies to get their finance teams in order and to raise money for, fundraising and things like that. And I realized that I can do this. I can create these things. I can do something for myself. It was really, felt like I had this in me to be able to create something. And I guess the third thing would be the moment I decided to leave corporate forever. And that would be, I was sitting in a boardroom in a biotech company, and I was seeing the leaders who were having a conversation. Actually, it wasn't a conversation; it was more of an argument. They were going back and forth and saying, it was more about who's right and who's wrong. It was a toxic conversation. And there was about 40 people in the room. Everyone was checked out, looking down at their phones. And I said to myself, like, my gosh, I don't think I can do this anymore. I can't collect a paycheck and just allow this to happen. So I decided at that moment that I have to leave the room to change the room, to change the way leaders show up. So I literally walked out of the boardroom and decided that I'm no longer doing this. And that's what led me to deciding to become a coach and advisor, all the things I am today. It all started from that moment of saying, I've had enough.
Wow.
I've had enough of all of this.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this. Thank you. My last question to you, and this is for the many, many young people who will listen to our conversation. As someone who's seen the top in the management world and now is on your own, what would your advice be to a young individual starting off on her or his journey in the corporate world?
It's a great question. So first and foremost, don't be afraid to experiment with other things. Like what I mean by that is that if you have some curiosity, follow your curiosity. Have conversations with people who are in different areas that you have a little curiosity about, because those conversations, you never know where they'll go. I've had many times where not only in my life, but even with people I've talked to who have told me that like one conversation changed their entire life.
Wow.
It's amazing. So if you're willing to open yourself up and have that courage to talk to somebody who you feel like might be out of your league, or why would they want to talk to me? You'd be surprised at how one conversation that allows you to explore maybe a new area of a new field, just find out more about other individuals. I often say everything happens through conversations.
Correct.
And it's true. So that's one thing for sure that I always advise people to do, is that, get out there and have more conversations that allow you to explore the different parts of the world that you're not. When I say world, I mean, the theoretical world, not the physical world, that allow you to see what you're capable of.
Correct. Well said. Tony, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your book, The Hypothesis of Climbing the Right Mountain, talking to me about inspired coaching, about inspiration, about coaching in general. And thank you for sharing with me your amazing pivot points. Thank you again, and good luck.
Truly a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast. A platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.